Good morning, everybody. It's me again. They let me back up here after I turned the lights off on y'all. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Brandon. I'm on staff here. Really excited. It's so much better to be here in person. I'm telling you, I was glad to be able to have the stream. And for those of you who have kids, I'm sure you've already thanked the kids workers as you dropped them off this morning. But for those of you who don't have kids, it's like going to church and there being a speaker right here as soon as you get to the serious stuff that's just the whole time. It's really hard to focus, so I'm super excited to be back in the room with the adults and ready to dive into this new sermon series. So all of January, we were in this series called Obsessed, where we were rolling out our new mission and vision as a church. If you missed any of those, I'd really encourage you, go back and watch them. There's some really important stuff that you're going to want to know about where we're headed and why we're headed there and what it means to follow Jesus. But in a gist, into what Pastor Steve said earlier, we're obsessed with Jesus around here, being with him, becoming like him, and doing as he did. And so this morning, we have a chance to learn to grow in that and how to grow that obsession and what Jesus has for us in this life. So we're going to be looking at the life of Joseph for the next 3 weeks before we're in the season of Lent. This new series, Joseph, Life in the Pits. And so this morning's going to be, this story's a pretty wild ride. I'm just going to hit that right from the beginning. I hope you had your coffee. We're going to be jumping into the lives of one of the most dysfunctional families in the Bible. And I'm sure you're like, great. I came to church to get away from my dysfunctional family. And now we get to spend the next 3 weeks talking about a dysfunctional one. It gets kind of crazy, but there's so much good in this story that I think God has to show us. And so this morning, the text, it's really a narrative. It's a story. It's pretty long, so I'm not going to make you stand for the reading this morning. But as we get ready to hear from the Word, take a second, quiet your heart, quiet your thoughts, silence your phones, and let's get ready to hear what God has for us. We're going to be in Genesis chapter 37, verses 1 to 34. And this is where Joseph really gets introduced, into this story. But the story of this family goes on quite a bit, so I'd really encourage you, if this series sparks your curiosity, get into the book of Genesis. This is a really interesting narrative that tells a lot about God's work through his chosen people. Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending to the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And he brought their father a bad report about them. Now Israel, that's another name for Jacob. So Jacob started out as Jacob, and then God renamed him Israel. It's the Israel we know, God's chosen people. The 12 tribes are his sons, kind of born out of that. So that's historical context there. So Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age. He made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him, and they could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. "Listen," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come down and bow to the ground before you?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Now his brothers had gone to graze their father's flocks near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "As you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I am going to send you to them." "Very well," he replied. So he said to him, "Go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring word back to me." Then he sent him off from the valley of Hebron. When Joseph arrived at Shechem, a man found him wandering around in the fields and asked him, "What are you looking for?" He replied, "I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing their flocks?" "They moved on from here. The man answered, I heard them say, let's go down to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan. But they saw him in the distance. And before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. Here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come, now let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we will see what comes of his dreams. When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. Let's not take his life, he said. Don't shed any blood. Throw him in the cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this to rescue him from them and to take him back to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing. They took him and threw him in the cistern. The cistern was empty. There was no water in it. As they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, what will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. His brothers agreed. So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the cistern and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes. He went back to his brothers and said, the boy isn't there. Where can I turn to now? Then they got Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, dipped the robe in the blood. They took the ornate robe back to their father and said, we found this. Examine it to see whether it's your son's robe. He recognized it and said, it is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned for his son many days. This is the word of the Lord. Would you say this prayer with me this morning? Thank you, Father, for the gift of your word, living and written. May your word do its work in us, so that empowered by your Spirit, we may do your work in the world. Amen. I don't know about you, but when I first read this story, I didn't know who to like. There's no, protagonist that just jumps out as, oh, he's the hero of this story. All of them are jacked up. I'm like, this is crazy, man. Every single character seems to have major character flaws. I don't know, man, just coming out of the holidays. Can you imagine Christmas with this crew? The amount of times it said the brothers hated each other and stuff. Count me out. I'm going on a cruise. I'm good. I don't know, maybe you heard that story and you relate to it a little bit. Maybe you have a family member that you've thought about throwing into a pit. Hopefully not, but I mean, this is real life. This is the word. Not everything in the Bible is polished and perfect, and this story is just telling us what it was and how it happened. And as you read this story, everyone in it has reasons for doing what they did, right? It's the way you read it, it reads it's more history than anything. This is just what happened. It's very matter of fact is how it's written. It doesn't get into any of the feelings or the thoughts or the emotions or the motives of anybody in this story. But I think that there's a lot of value we can find, and this is what I love about Scripture. If you've read through the Bible, you know that, it's not okay, that's a book I've crossed off my list. You keep reading it because, new things come to life every time you read it. God gives you new perspectives. And so one of the things that I like to do, especially in these narrative stories that aren't it's not like a gospel where it's we know this was written by Matthew, and so it's reading Matthew's interpretation into it, is to look at all the different characters and think, why would they do that? What's the motive behind these actions? And so I want to preach a little differently than I've ever done before this morning, and we're going to look at 3 different characters from this story. So I'm going to take a little bit of creative liberty. I'm going to read into the story some emotions that are not there, but everything contextually that I'm giving is straight from Scripture. And so the first one we're going to look at is the perspective of Jacob, the father, the patriarch, the one who was called Israel. Hi, I'm Jacob. I would describe myself as an ambitious guy. Opportunities don't exactly fall into the lap of second-born sons, the way they do firstborns at least. you know, and I wasn't really like, I'm just not the kind of guy to settle. I wanted better for myself. And so, you know, can you blame me? Some people have called me sneaky or tricky. Come on, I mean, it's not like I forced my brother Esau to give me his birthright. Like, it's not my fault. I just offered him soup, and he traded me. It's not my fault. He's a dimwit. I know, you know, maybe it was a little over the line when I also tricked my dad into giving me his blessing. But I mean, come on, like, look at Esau. Like, the guy has no ambition. He just hunts and he's hairy and weird, and like, he doesn't have a bunch of dreams and goals. Like, a blessing and a birthright would have just been a waste on him. So, I mean, it's not like I'm the only one who thinks it. Mom was on board. I mean, she even helped me come up with the plan to get the blessing. So, I mean, she recognizes potential. I see opportunity. I don't know. Everything in my life, you know, that was a little bumpy, but I had the footing that I needed to get going. I had a blessing. I had a birthright. And then my father-in-law, Laban, came into the picture. You see, I met his daughter, Rachel. And whew, man, like, you know, like, there's not a lot of Rachels in our day. Like, she's like a 10, man. And like, I knew from the second I saw her, like, I've got to marry this girl. So I went and I talked to Laban and I worked out a deal. And he said, you know what? If you work for me for 7 years, then you can marry Rachel. Like, 7 years is pretty steep, but I mean, have you seen Rachel? It's just 7 years. So I worked those 7 years, and it was hard, and I got through it, and finally, it was time for the wedding. And then Laban comes up to me, and I think he's about to shake my hand and say, hey, this is great. Let's get you all married up. We're all squared away here. And that's not what the guy said. He said, well, you know, I guess I did forget to mention this, but in our culture, it's traditional to marry off the firstborn daughter before the younger daughters. So you can marry Leah. And like, how do I put this? Leah's no Rachel, if you know what I mean. But he said, you can still marry Rachel, you just have to work for 7 more years. Like, what am I supposed to do? I've already given 7 years of my life to be able to marry Rachel. What's 7 years more, I guess? I didn't really want 2 wives, but I'd already put in the work, so be it. 7 more years, marry Rachel. After all of that, Rachel couldn't have kids. We tried. It just wasn't happening. And then on top of that, so like, you know, Leah and I had a few kids, and Rachel was jealous, and so she had me sleep with her concubine so that we could have kids, so I could have kids on her behalf. And then Leah got jealous, and then before you know it, I've got 10 sons and a couple daughters, and things kind of escalated pretty quickly. Then, after waiting forever, God finally allowed Rachel to have a son, Joseph. It's all I ever wanted. I was so excited. But if it weren't for Laban, I could have just had the family that I wanted, the family with Rachel all along. See, those 10 other sons, they were just so troublesome. Like, wouldn't you be frustrated? Sure you would. I've never met a parent who wasn't frustrated at some point with their kids. And like, I get it. Like, kids are supposed to be a blessing, but like, beyond having them, I just wasn't feeling really blessed. And then Rachel had another son, and we had Benjamin. And the worst day of my life followed it. She died after giving birth to him. You can't understand the emptiness that I felt. I have this giant family, all these kids that I didn't even really want. My sons keep making decisions that are putting me in difficult spots and situations and circumstances. Joseph and Benjamin are all that I have left of Rachel. They represent the life that I wanted. a life that I would never have again. Cruel, isn't it? Sure, I have money and animals and success, but the person that I wanted to enjoy it with was gone. Now I'm stuck with kids from a wife that I didn't want, without at least having the wife that I did want to balance it out a little bit. Even though, Reuben, he was technically my firstborn, he didn't deserve the privileges of my blessing and my birthright. I mean, you talk about kid problems. Like, he slept with my concubine. His other brother's mother, Reuben's a lost cause. Joseph was the one he's the one who's going to get my blessing. That's how it should have been anyways. If I hadn't have been cheated out of the life that I wanted for myself, at least this was still in my control. And then the second worst day of my life happened. You see, I was waiting on Joseph to return with his report on his brothers, as he always does. But instead, as I looked over the hill, it wasn't Joseph that was coming home. It was his brothers. And they were coming back without him. And they told me that Joseph had been killed by a wild animal. And I had just lost the firstborn that I had always wanted. It felt like losing Rachel all over again. I don't know how to move forward. I don't even think that I want to. Benjamin is the last piece of her that I have left. And I will not lose him. And then we have Reuben, who's the firstborn son of Jacob. And this is how I would imagine he would tell this story. I'm Reuben, Jacob's firstborn son. Not that you'd know it. It's like I was a disappointment from the moment that I was born. I don't understand. I was supposed to be the one to lead this house one day. And it's like my father can't even stand the sight of me. I tried to do things right, but it never seemed to matter. I would have killed to hear him say he was proud of me. I don't know. Maybe things will change someday. And they did. Wow, did they change? Everything changed. It all started the day that Joseph was born. It was like Dad became this totally different person. Like all the things that I had hoped for, but didn't think were possible, all started to happen at once, except for it wasn't with me. It was with Joseph. I started getting even less attention than I did before, so why try? Then I had this idea. Well, if being the firstborn son isn't enough to get his attention, if trying hard isn't enough to get his attention, I know what'll get it. I slept with Dad's concubine. Figured that would do it. Anything was better than being invisible. Surely something as big as this would do it. He was mad for a bit. And then Joseph got the coat. That coat was nicer than anything I had ever received from my parents. Every time he wore it, it felt like a slap to the face. After that, Dad sent that little rat out to spy on us. He told Dad everything we were doing wrong. There it is again. Why can't you be more like Joseph? Joseph would have done it right. Yeah, okay, then make him do it. I can't be the only one this has happened to, right? Comparing me to him, like who's supposed to measure up to this golden boy? Anyways, then we come back and Joseph starts sharing his dreams that we would all bow down to him, even Dad. I did get to enjoy one moment in this. This was great. When Dad laid into him on that one I'm tucking away. Not that it's likely to ever happen again, but I enjoyed the moment nonetheless. It was short-lived, and then back to the fields we went. At least it was a break from watching Dad dote all over Joseph all the time. Then we see him coming in the distance, there to give our dad another bad report again. Eventually, my brothers snapped. They wanted to kill him. I knew that was too far, so I stopped him, and we threw him in a pit instead. I had planned to come back for him, but when I returned, he was gone, sold into slavery. This will destroy my dad. There's no way we can tell him the truth. We'll say Joseph was killed by a wild animal. Looks like my dad's love was never in the cards for me. And last but not least, we have Joseph. I'm Joseph, Jacob's second youngest son. Life's been pretty good for a 17-year-old, aside from being the odd one out in my family. And you might think I'm being dramatic, but I'm not even exaggerating. My dad likes me, but everyone else, they hate my guts. Any other black sheep in the room? I've always had a special relationship with my dad since mom died. It's tough watching all my brothers with their moms when Benjamin and I lost ours. I know it's a lot for my dad to manage, so I've tried to be helpful and do what I'm told. I don't think my brothers understand it. Actually, I think they hate me for it. You should have seen their faces when Dad gave me my new coat. Sure, the coat was nice, but I could feel the hatred every single time they saw it. What was I supposed to do? Not wear it? It was a gift. It's not like I asked for it. What would you have done? My brothers, they're not exactly grade A students, if you know what I mean. They're always bending the rules and getting into trouble. I won't even tell you what my brother Reuben did. I don't spend much time around them if I don't have to. The other day, Dad asked me to check on them in the field where they were supposed to be taking care of the sheep, so I did what he asked. Of course, my brothers were getting into trouble, and I wasn't going to lie to Dad. I just reported what I saw. That's what he asked me to do. I don't know why they won't just do what Dad expects. We all know what's required. When they got back home, let's just say they weren't too happy with me, especially after Dad lit them up. That's a little bit about my family. I'm sure we sound like a blast to be around. Anyways, I had these crazy dreams the other night. Dreams where my brother and even my parents were all bowing down to me. Crazy, right? I told my family about the dreams, which, I guess looking back probably wasn't the best idea. Let's just say it didn't go over well. Even Dad got mad. It's not like I control my dreams. It's just what came to me. Historically, dreams have always meant something to our people, but I don't know, maybe it was nothing. Then Dad called me out to check on my brothers again. Yippee, can't wait to do this again. I went to where they were supposed to be, but they weren't there. Surprise! After asking around, I figured out where they went. I thought it'd be like any other checkup. I go, they're annoyed, I go home, done. Not this time. As soon as I arrived, they grabbed me, they ripped my coat off and tied me up. They threw me into a pit. I could hear them eating dinner. They didn't even care that I was still down there. It was cruel. Felt like they blamed me for everything. It's my fault they got into trouble rather than their own actions. I never asked Dad to treat me the way that he does. What a miserable night. Not to mention, what do you even do after people treat you that way? Especially your own family. Do I tell Dad? Do I just pretend that it didn't happen? I don't know. Anyways, what felt like forever passed and a rope dropped down. Finally, this whole thing could just be over. I was hungry. I was ready to go home. But when they pulled me up, there was more people there than just my brothers. I saw some money change hands. They brought me over and handed me to these traders, and that's when it hit me. I wasn't going home. I had just become a slave. So there's a commonality in all three of these stories. It's a universal truth about how all of us would tell our stories, and it's this. Without an outside perspective, we will always see ourselves as the victim. And when we see ourselves as a victim, we find a way to justify every action that we take. Well, I did this because... And that perspective almost always leads us to a pit. Pits in relationships, pits in our families, pits at work, pits in life. I see this constantly in broken relationships. There's this total lack of ownership. And that's what makes it so dangerous. You see, when people lose ownership, they start doing horrible things to each other. And the scariest part is they do it without guilt because they feel justified in it. I don't know, maybe you hear the story today and you realize when you look at how you tell the story of your life, sometimes we come to a place where we recognize I'm not the hero in this that I thought that I was. And if that's you today, that can be a really difficult and scary thing to face, because it means there might be a lot I have to own up to. There might be a lot I have to change. But I think that's what this scripture is wanting to get at in us. All of us have been guilty of it. All of us have things that we do that we've justified, that we just need a different perspective on to see things differently. The exciting news is that even if we find ourselves in this pit today, we don't have to stay in them. That's what I love about church is every time you come here, you're going to hear one way that you are totally messed up. And then you're going to hear how God can fix it. And you're going to hear how you can do things differently. And man, there's so much hope in that this morning. So I want to take a look at each of these characters again, but this time through another lens. So I don't know if you noticed this, there's a lens that's missing in all of this story. In the entire chapter, God is not mentioned a single time. The whole chapter 37. Think about how many momentous things happen in this family's life in just this chapter alone. Not a single mention, not a thought, not a question, not a prayer, much less a lens to view these things through. And that's how a lot of us do it, right? We go through these giant things that happen in our life, and we do it without God. And it looks pretty similar to this. When you read the narrative, it makes sense. How else does a family become that cruel to one another? It's because they never stop to ask the question, what does God think about this? If God had shaped their decisions, their perspectives, their actions, the story could have been extremely different. God still would have accomplished his purposes as he always does. But there's so much pain that I think could have been avoided in the story of this family. So let's start with Jacob. He's the father. He's apathetic. He's passive. He's a poor leader. He's guilty of favoritism. He's manipulative. He engaged in polygamy. He was selfish. This hatred between his sons is not it's something that's just you don't notice. But it doesn't say Jacob recognized there was a problem in his family and worked hard to fix it. It just was allowed to go on. And then his actions caused deep division among his children. So here's an interesting thing. In Jacob's history with Jacob and Esau, he was on the opposite end of a parent who showed favoritism. Esau was the favorite of his fathers. So he lived the pain of that, the sin of his father, and then he perpetuated the sin of that with his own sons, and it wreaked havoc in his family. If there is sin that you grew up with and you don't address it, it is going to pass from generation to generation to generation until you allow God to step in and say, you can do it differently. I just have to think, what would have been different in this story if he had asked God for perspective? I think he could have been a great dad. He could have recognized, you know what? I have a tendency to blame others, which he did. If you go back and read his story, again, from the historical context, he's got a rap sheet. He would have recognized his problem with treating his kids unfairly, his refusal to take ownership over the brokenness that existed in his family. You see, I think with God's perspective, he would have said, my kids are a blessing. All of them. He would have said, my circumstances haven't always been ideal, but I can parent differently. I can do it differently than I grew up with. And God can help me. I can learn from my mistakes. That's the other thing in this story. This family's so frustrating because they all make the same mistakes. Father, son, father, son, father, son. They lie to each other. It's it is a hot dumpster fire. He could have said, I have a blended family, but I can still fight for unity within this. Yeah, our circumstances weren't ideal, but they can still be holy. I can lead my kids to love and follow God. If you're a parent, there's a little nugget that I want to give you here. There's 3 things that Jacob did that if you do, it will destroy your kids. The first one is favoritism. The second one is comparison. And the third is a hands-off approach to guidance and discipline. Here's what I mean. If you have a kid and you favor them over your other kids, if you have a kid and you're always why don't you just do it if that even exists in your vocabulary, if you just think your kids are going to figure this out and you don't guide them through their mistakes and you don't walk them through living a godly life, here's what you're going to see. And the interesting thing, these are symptoms of that. But in parenting, so often when I talk to people, they're like, how do I fix this? And they don't realize that they're trying to treat the symptoms. They're not treating the cause. When you do this, your kids will be anxious. They will struggle with depression. They will struggle with low self-esteem. They will participate in attention-seeking behavior and poor decision-making. Your kids need your attention. Don't be the reason they need therapy when they're older. You can break the cycles now before it happens. So how do we make sure that we don't fall into that? Look at your kids for who they are. Anyone with multiple kids knows none of them are the same, outside of introducing chaos. That's a universal. Get used to it. But love and respect and encourage them equally. Some of us, like the kids that are more like us, that frustrates us. Some of us, the kids that are more like us, we gravitate towards. Here's the thing, like God made He formed every single one of your kids. And He gave them gifts and talents and made them in His image. And then He gave them to you to steward. Don't compare them. Celebrate what makes them different. Celebrate their gifts and talents, and then be active in shaping them. Because here's the reality. If you are not intentionally forming your kids into the adults that you want them to be, they will be deformed by outside influences. If you're living in dysfunction, they might even be deformed by you. And as a parent, that's not what we want, man. And God says it doesn't have to be that way. And if Jacob would have just said, God, what do you think about this? It could have been so different. And then Reuben and the brothers, right? So Reuben, he uses the sins of others to justify his own sins. That's like his big character flaw. I see this a lot. And okay, so these are going to be very forward. I'm not doing this to try to like beat anybody up. Like, this is just what was in the text. And so let's look at it through the truthful lens that it is. Reuben did what a lot of people do, which is they used the wounds that were inflicted by their parents to excuse the destructive behaviors they have in their life. They use past traumas to justify present dysfunction. And here's the reality, like, and all of this is within the context of it being with God. At some point, we have to stop blaming the things that happen to us and stop using that as permission to keep hurting ourselves and other people. We have to be done with it. We have to be tired of it. We have to say, the human problem is so crazy. Like, it's a feeling we have that we never wanted to have. We wouldn't want anybody else to have, but then we do things that make everyone else feel that way. What if Reuben had God's perspective? What if he would have stopped blaming his dad's favoritism for his actions and just take ownership of his own mistakes? He would have probably treated Joseph differently. He would have said, my dad failed me, but I don't have to be that way. He would have said, my family might be broken, but I can live differently. God can help me become better than what I came from. Maybe you relate to the brothers. Like, there's something in this story for all of us, man. Like, unless you have a perfect family, which I haven't met one yet, but if you do, you're blessed. Without God's perspective, we take the things that we learn as kids, the attention-seeking behavior, right? Like, my parents don't give me attention, so when I act out, they give me attention, and that's what I'll do for attention. We carry that into adulthood, and man, it really is not a good look on adults. It's not a great look on kids, but it's even worse when we carry that into adulthood. When we just justify bad habits and bad decisions, when we perpetuate dysfunction rather than taking steps to heal it. Or better said, to allow God to heal it. And then unhealed wounds in us turn into bitterness and anger and cruelty. So how do we fight this? Acknowledge where you came from. Don't live in denial. Look at it. Say, you know, do you ever have that moment when you're a kid and like there's things your family does and then you tell other people, assuming that everyone does it, and they're like, you what? You're like, nothing, right? Those kind of things. Like, just take an honest look at like, from the outside looking in, now that I'm older, now that I see how other people do things, like, was my upbringing healthy? Was it normal? Was it functional? And if it wasn't, acknowledge the dysfunction. And know that even though it wasn't your choice, there is going to be some of that is in you. It's what you grew up with. It's what you were taught. It's what was normalized. That's not your fault. But it is your responsibility to change. Choose to live differently. The reality is as adults, like, we're responsible for our actions. Nobody makes us do anything. If you get anything from this section, I want you to hear this. You didn't choose your wounds, but you can choose your healing. So that means we start doing things differently. Well, where do you start? Stop adding fuel to the fire. If you know your family's dysfunctional and they're going to fight on something, disengage. Disengage the conversation. Disengage the moment. Excuse yourself if you need to. Set up healthy boundaries. And I'm not saying like you're cut off forever, I'm never talking to you, get away from me, don't look at me kind of boundaries. That's not healthy. Healthy boundaries are communicated. There's an end goal to them. Hey, because you did this, it's impacting me in this way, and so I'm not going to allow you to treat me that way. So if you do, I'm going to leave. That's a healthy boundary. Take ownership and apologize when you need to. Just like in the retelling of these stories, I was very intentional in like, none of those three characters owned their role. But they all contributed to the dysfunction of this family. The best way to break those cycles, that dysfunction, is to be the first one to take ownership. Even if nobody else does, you can own what you did, which can allow you to heal and move forward. And at the end of the day, rise above it. We're called to something greater. We're called to something higher than that. See, Joseph, he wasn't arrogant, but he was naive. He wasn't cruel, but he was careless. He wasn't openly sinful, but he was immature. You see, Joseph was favored by God, as we're about to hear it over the next couple weeks of his story. But he didn't carry that favor with humility. He lacked discernment. Joseph, like, man, that guy doesn't know how to read a room. But he's 17, right? He's a kid in this story. He struggles with timing. He makes the mistake of confusing truth-telling with wisdom. We all know people like this. You know, like, you're in a serious moment or at a funeral or something where it's like, the best thing is just to be quiet. And then they're like telling jokes and you're like, oh, would you just shut up? He couldn't read the room. Or the people, like, how many relationships have been damaged by the people that are like, we've all heard this. This is going to make you laugh. I'm just telling the truth. Somebody had to say it. Sorry if that just gave you a flashback into chaos, because that's usually what ensues from those kind of statements. Here's the reality. Truth matters. Truth is important. But along with truth comes timing. And along with timing comes delivery. The Holy Spirit cares about all three and will guide and shape you into those things. If there's something that you need to speak on, God, what do you think? You see, maturity helps you learn to read the room. It helps you come to a place where it's not all about me. That's what those I'm just speaking the truth. It's all about me. I want you to know how I feel or what I perceive to be the truth is. Maturity says, a funeral is probably not the place to go up and say, well, you know, when you really look at their actions, is heaven in their future? Don't do that, please. Maturity brings you to a place where you take into consideration your surroundings, the feelings of the people that you're with. Immaturity says, this is just who I am, and refuses to adjust behavior for the sake of anybody else. But when God is a part of the perspective, so many of these pits are completely avoidable. If someone were to read your life as a story today, a narrative form, like the scripture we began today with, where would God be mentioned? Would he be on this page? Would he be in this chapter? Or maybe it's your first time in here and he wouldn't be in any of it yet. You see, we've all been in the pits, but the good news is no matter where you're at today, God still has a plan for you. And we're about to learn over the next couple weeks about how God's plan came to fruition in the life of Joseph. The pit that you find yourself in today does not have to destroy your purpose. Maybe you've been stuck in this pit. The primary pit today that our characters found themselves in is the pit of poor perspective. Blaming others, avoiding ownership, repeating patterns. Jesus can help you see things through God's eyes for the first time. And he does that by giving us this incredible chance to take our broken, messed up, selfish life. And he says this, hey, how about this? You give me all of that. You die to who you are now, and I'll give you life with me. I'll teach you to live obsessed with me, with my kingdom, with my purposes. I'll teach you to see the whole world through my lens. But all the stuff from before, that's got to go. You got to let me change this. Around here, we call that saying the big yes. It's the first time. It's the point where we come to a place where we're like, none of this is getting any better without you. So if those three characters were in the room today, I think if Jacob were here, instead of saying, I don't know how to move forward, I don't even think I want to. Benjamin is the last piece of her I have left. I will not lose him. I think he would say something like this. I lost a lot, but I don't have to live in the past. I don't have to let that keep me from God's blessing today. And you don't either. I think for Reuben, instead of saying, it looks like my dad's love was never in the cards for me, he would say, you know, I may have never had the love and the affection of my earthly father that I wanted, but I do have the love and affection of my Father in heaven, and that's enough. And I'm enough because he says I am. And so are you. Maybe Joseph would say, I found myself in a pit, but that was not the end of my story. And your pit doesn't have to be the end of yours either. God always provides a way out of the pit, but I think there's three questions that we have to face. If we want that change to happen, if we want God to be able to work, we have to be truthful with ourselves. The first one is this: who am I blaming? Is my reason for doing things because it's the right thing to do, or is it because so-and-so? Where am I refusing to take ownership? And who am I treating unfairly? And if you start with those, God can do so much work in your life. But you have to be honest. You have to be honest with him about it. So no matter how we respond this morning, the important thing is that we do respond. And the altars are going to be open. Prayer team, you guys can come on up. If you want to pray to say the big yes to Jesus, come up here and do that with somebody. We'd love to walk you through that. But the altar is not just a place where we come to lay down our junk. Like so often it's like, oh, we only go to the altar if there's something that we need help with. And so we're like, God, take all this. Take my hurt, take my brokenness, take my broken family, take my dysfunction. This is also a place, God doesn't he wants that stuff. He'll take it from you. He will transform you. But it's not just about, I don't want to feel these things anymore. It's also about, you get those, but you get everything else. So sometimes we come to the altar because it's an opportunity to give God the good things, the things he blessed us with. However you respond this morning, I just encourage you, whatever it was that God put on your heart. Maybe it's somebody you got to pray for. Maybe it's something in your life that you need to give over. Maybe it's something you need to admit to. Maybe you need to step out into the lobby and make a phone call and say, I need to own something. The biggest mistake you can make today is to not do whatever it is that God's drawn to your heart today. So the band's going to play. We're going to worship. Would you guys stand and sing with us this morning?